And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you by the Fanatic Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. And, of course, it's a busy week. It's a short week for the Eagles, and we'll dive into all things going on with the Eagles making an early appearance this week on the show for Football at 4. Andrew DiCecco, who normally joins us on Thursday, but, of course, Thursday being Thanksgiving, DiCecco is in on an early Tuesday edition of Football at 4 this week, and really interested to see what he has to say about what's going on with this embattled Eagles team. Only in journalism word, embattled Eagles team. Andrew making a rare Tuesday appearance on Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash because of the Thanksgiving holiday. First, Andrew, happy Thanksgiving early to you, my friend. How are you?
Happy Thanksgiving to you, too, and all your listeners, Mike. I'm doing great. A little out of my elements because it's a Tuesday, but looking forward to chatting about some Eagles football.
Yeah, well, it's a little fresh in the game, so we get a chance to really kind of keep picking at that game a little bit. And obviously, it did not go well. 21-0, they're up, and then the fallout. What stood out to you the most when you look back at that game and say, this is something that is, I don't want, alarming, or something that you want to focus a little bit more on how that game kind of unfolded?
Well, for me, it's the self-inflicted wounds. 14 penalties, 96 yards, and they wiped away a lot of big plays. That Dallas Goedert play off of play action that was 20 yards. It was the second play in the second half off the Grant Calcaterra 8-yard catch. Then that gets called back to illegal formation. And there were a number of other, the A.J. Brown false start, and the play before the Saquon Barkley fumble. It was a 16-yard completion, and Devontae Smith, Fred Johnson gets called for illegal hands to the face. So there's just so many different things that have been a prevailing theme this season for the Eagles, and I think you have to look at it and say, if it hasn't gotten better at this point, and you keep saying the same things, at what point do you have to enact a pretty drastic change or alter the way that you go about the complexion of the offense?
Yeah, and we've heard so much, including yesterday, Nick Sirianni getting asked point blank, is he considering making a change in play caller? He says, no, I have not, but is that something that is even plausible at this stage of the season?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and say that Kevin Patullo called an exceptional game, because he didn't, but it was only a small piece of it was a piece of what went wrong with the Eagles in that game. And I look more to the executional errors, the mental miscues, because, in the first half, they looked pretty damn good offensively, and they just weren't able to sustain that, Mike. But at this stage of the season, this is an 8-3 football team. I know that a lot of fans want answers. They want something to be drastic, a drastic measure to maybe alter the course of the season or the way the offense looks. But you have to look at it and say, this is Nick Sirianni's offense. So regardless of who's calling plays, they're going to be calling the plays through the lens of how Nick Sirianni wants it to look. And whether that's Scott Loeffler, the quarterback's coach, Jason Michael, the tight ends coach, who was an offensive coordinator at one point in his career at the Tennessee Titans, or Parks Frazier, who's the pass game coordinator, yeah, you might see something different in terms of rhythm and sequencing, but overall, these are going to be the plays and the way that Nick Sirianni wants the offense to look. So I'm not so sure that you're going to see the change that many are expecting, and it's not really surprising to me, Mike, to hear Nick Sirianni say that he hasn't considered a change.
Well, I'm glad you went down that road, because we were talking about this with, throughout the show yesterday, Adam included, for Football at 4, and everybody loves pointing the finger at the coordinator, right? That's the easy thing to do. Mm-hmm. The coordinator's at fault. But as Adam kind of pointed out, there were a lot of plays that had success that were negated by penalties, right? That the play was called and performed. It was an execution problem that called the plays back. So there, people act like every single down and distance you're going to succeed in. That's not plausible. But there were a lot of plays in that game that had success that were negated by the self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah, you're 100% spot on. And I think not only in Philadelphia, but in every city, there's always the urge to assign blame. Everybody wants to find the answer, but it's not always a specific person or a specific reason. The Eagles still can't run the ball, Mike. There's a lot of penalties. There's self-inflicted wounds. There's executional errors. There's just so many different things at play. And yes, I am including the play calling and the designs. That needs to be better. But, I think there's too much finger pointing in the direction of Kevin Patullo. And, yeah, I mean, you can make of it what you will. I mean, he's a first-year coordinator, and there were and are growing pains that come with that. But if you're looking, exclusively at Sunday, there were a lot of plays to be made in that game. And the Eagles had chances to put the Cowboys away, and we wouldn't even be having that conversation. But, they weren't able to do it for a lot of issues that have been prevalent throughout the season, but they've been winning, so they almost get swept under the rug. And these are the type of things that A.J. Brown was trying to put a spotlight on a few weeks ago and throughout the season so that they can kind of head that off and not let this be something that burns them down the line.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, looking at the Eagles and the Cowboys, the fallout from that game. You mentioned everybody always points at the play caller, but you said the offensive line. Throughout this day, we heard from Chris Long saying the offensive line's a problem. We've heard from a lot of people. And you wonder, is that at the top of the list of the problems? When it's the play caller, it's the quarterback, it's the play design, it's the running back. But ultimately, it all stems from what the offensive line's performance is. And that doesn't seem fixable, does it?
No, and I don't rank like the issues that they have, but I'll tell you this: if you, it all starts up front. We all know that, and foundationally, the Eagles want to run the football. They want to impose their will at the line of scrimmage and take advantage of Saquon Barkley and their ability to grind out clock and force defenses to play them a certain way, and then all of a sudden that opens up the playbook. You saw that last season. Defenses had to respect the fact that the Eagles were going to run the football, and it opened things up in the passing game. It masked a lot of the issues that are now surfacing because they don't have that running game. And you look at the health of the offensive line. Cam Jurgens has not played to the level that we've seen him play, a Pro Bowl level, this season. He had off-season back surgery. You have to wonder if that lingers, and it certainly lingers. But you have, when you're playing in the manner in which this Eagles offensive line plays and how physical and how much of a toll it takes. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to wonder. It's hard to get healthy when you're playing that style throughout the season. Landon Dickerson battles through a multitude of injuries, and he's had some glimpses this season where he looks like the dominant form, that Pro Bowl form that we've seen, but not as often. Jordan Mailata has struggled. You have Fred Johnson at right tackle, and despite what you may have heard going into that game, Mike, I know that there were some that were like, oh, the Eagles will be okay. They have Fred Johnson. He's done it before. Fred Johnson is a solid NFL player, and I believe that if you rank 32 offensive tackles, he's probably in that list. But he's not Lane Johnson, a future Hall of Famer, and there were some plays in that game that served as a reminder. And the Eagles are going to have to continue to navigate through that, but I just outlined some of the issues there on the offensive line or some of the things to be mindful of. And if they're not able to establish that dominance at the point of attack, it really limits what you're able to do from an execution standpoint and from a play calling standpoint.
Well, and the Fred Johnson thing's a great one, Andrew, because, he might not give up a sack, but if he's getting pushed back to where Hurts has to move off of a spot or he can't, he feels pressure coming, it doesn't mean that just because he didn't give up sacks in the game that there wasn't more pressure coming from that spot than he's used to, and how that throws off all the timing. But the offensive line in the run game, too. I mean, Saquon is obviously, I think Adam mentioned this yesterday, man. He's on pace to have like 1,000 less yards from last year. He went over 2,000. He's barely on pace to get 1,100 yards this year. And I would imagine that it's more the offensive line than it is Saquon Barkley. Do you think that is, or do you think that Bigsby maybe should get a couple more touches and be a bigger part of this offense?
No, I think it's more on the offensive line than Saquon Barkley. To me, Mike, and this is just my perspective, Saquon Barkley looks like the same guy. I don't believe that the 482 touches that he had, including the postseason, has hindered him in any way. Because when he gets his opportunities, and they have been few and far between this season, I understand, he's looked pretty spry. He runs really hard and really tough, and I think a lot of his, slow traction in the running game this season can be directly attributed to the offensive line. But then there are also times where it looks like Saquon Barkley is pressing a little bit and not taking what's in front of him, which is where I think Tank Bigsby has done a nice job in the limited sample size. And I am not of the belief that giving Tank Bigsby a sizable portion of the workload is the answer here. I think you can certainly find a way to get him 7-8 carries a game and have a little bit more of a balance, because he does add a spark. He does run really hard. I talked to him last week and about his unique decisiveness as a runner. He almost creates his own blocks at times. I think they need to find a way to incorporate all three running backs. I'm including Will Shipley in that, because they all present something different. And I think if you do that, with that optionality will come, you're able to confound defenses a little bit, and they have to, account for that. So that's something that when you look at the offense, it is what it is, but there are certain things that they can do from a personnel grouping standpoint to try and freshen things up a bit.
When you look at the strife in this offense, right, it's KP. Oh, no, it's the passing game. Well, Hurts kind of does what he wants. Well, you can't call all the plays because Hurts, doesn't want to run certain plays here. When you look at the quarterback's role in what's gone on with this offense, what do you kind of see in terms of where he stands and why this offense is struggling? Because I was talking about this the other day. He's a great player. He's won a Super Bowl MVP. But we all know there's not universal, like you say, hey, Tom Brady, everyone says, great. Peyton Manning, great. Drew Brees. You go to a bar in any of those towns and bring up their names, nobody argues with you. That's not the case with this guy. So what do you see from him in his role and why this offense is struggling to be consistent?
Well, first of all, I think Jalen is performing better than he did last season, and I do believe that. But it's hard to look at this offense and not think back to the comment that he made. The offense is going to look how Jalen Hurts wants it to look. So, I mean, to me, it always felt like a Sirianni and Hurts melding, where they have a vision of what they want the offense to look like, and they've given Jalen Hurts a lot of autonomy, and they should. He's a franchise quarterback, Super Bowl MVP. I think he's one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL, but there are times this season where he seems to, he's a little slow to pull the trigger on some things, and there are plays left on the field, and I look at certain instances where maybe a ball placement is a big one, right? When you talk about running after the catch. I think all those things are fair in criticism, but he's far from the Eagles' concerns offensively. I think that he's made the best of a pretty ominous circumstance offensively, and I think he is playing at a high level. Now, you can't take that sack on that 3rd and 2, and for that 13-yard loss, you have to get rid of the football. You have to have more awareness in that situation. And I'm sure you can cherry pick other moments this season, but he protects the football, he leads the offense, and he leads with conviction. And I do believe that they're going to, it's hard to say that they're going to get things rolling, but what I think that from Jalen Hurts, from his perspective, he's done a solid job.
All right, we'll get you out on this. The defense. Everybody kind of hung their hat on. This defense is great. This defense, we talk about 23 in the fall of that season was, that defense was terrible. This defense is so much better. I don't argue with that, but the defense on Sunday, was there any concerning things that you saw? And then, of course, you add into some of the injuries that have now been added to the situation.
This is where numbers can kind of conflate things a little bit, because you look at the stats and the yards that they allowed to the Cowboys, and you might say, well, the defense got handled in this one. But I came away from that game encouraged with their performance, considering their red zone stops, right? The interception from Reed Blankenship, and Xavier Gibson fumbles the football. They have a very short field. They hold them out of the end zone, in 4 downs. And yes, one of those plays was a CeeDee Lamb drop. He had a few of those in that game. But when they had to rise to the occasion, I'm going to spare using the Kobe Dean reference instead of knuckle up. We'll say knuckle up, but you guys can infer. That they find ways to make sure that they're delivering when the moment is, the moment calls for it. Now, they gave up quite a bit of passing yards. I think it was 356 to Dak Prescott. George Pickens is arguably the best receiver, or among the best receivers in the NFL. And CeeDee Lamb had his moments as well. And they need to do a better job there. I think Javonte Williams had 87 yards. And early in the game, I thought they did a nice job plugging the run. And then they just stayed with it. 22 carries, maybe 20 carries for 87 yards. He's not an explosive runner. He's more decisive and more of the grinded-out type running backs. But, yeah, I thought that they did some good things. Zach Bond had a dropped interception. That Kobe Dean had an interception that didn't stand because of too many men on the field. So if some of those things happen, and all of a sudden it looks a little bit different.
Well, the point as we get you out of here, Andrew DiCecco, is 14 penalties, horrible. That can't happen. And generally, that's as sloppy as we've ever seen them. The turnovers. This is a team that prides itself on winning the turnover battle, and they win games because they don't turn the ball over. That didn't happen on Sunday. Hopefully, that was a one-and-done trend moving forward, and they're right back at it on Friday, Black Friday, right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's the Eagles and the Bears. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, man, and always enjoy talking to you every week here, and look forward to the stretch run of the season.
Much appreciated, Mike. Happy Thanksgiving.